there is a quiet strength that very few people understand. The ability to sit alone without feeling empty. The ability to live without constantly needing attention, approval, or reassurance. Buddhist wisdom teaches that true happiness begins the moment you stop depending on others to complete you. When you are comfortable alone, your mind becomes peaceful. When you stop chasing validation, your heart becomes lighter. When you release emotional dependence, life becomes simpler. You begin to realize that being alone is not a weakness. It is freedom. In this video, you will discover 7 powerful lessons that will help you develop inner peace, emotional independence, and the rare ability to be truly happy even without anyone. 1. Happiness that depends on others is unstable. Many people quietly build their entire emotional world around others without even realizing it. They believe happiness will finally arrive when someone special enters their life, when someone understands them perfectly, or when they feel accepted and appreciated by those around them. They start to believe that another person is the missing piece that will complete them. Because of this belief, they begin to connect their emotional stability to someone else's presence, attention, or behavior. At first, this may feel comforting, but slowly it creates a hidden dependency that makes the mind fragile. When happiness depends on people, it automatically becomes uncertain, because people themselves are uncertain. Human beings change constantly, priorities change with time, feelings evolve, and circumstances shift in unexpected ways. Someone who gives you attention today may become busy tomorrow. Someone who understands you now may misunderstand you later. Someone who stays close today may choose a different path in the future. When your emotional balance depends entirely on these changing factors, your peace becomes unstable because it is built on something that is always moving. Buddhist wisdom teaches that anything outside of you is temporary, and anything temporary cannot be the foundation of permanent peace. When your happiness depends only on external validation, appreciation, or companionship, your emotional state begins to rise and fall based on situations that you cannot fully control. A simple delay in a message, a change in tone, or a shift in someone's attitude can suddenly disturb your mind. Over time, this creates anxiety, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion because your mind is constantly trying to protect something that is not fully in your hands. True stability begins when you slowly shift the source of your happiness from outside to inside. Instead of asking, "Who will make me feel complete?" you begin asking, "How can I feel complete within myself?" This small shift changes everything. When happiness is created internally, it becomes independent of circumstances. You no longer feel emotionally shaken by every small change around you because your peace is no longer attached to unpredictable conditions. Learning to enjoy your own company is one of the most powerful forms of emotional strength. When you become comfortable being alone, you start discovering parts of yourself that were always hidden beneath noise and distraction. You begin to understand your thoughts, your values, and your inner voice more clearly. Instead of feeling empty, you begin to feel grounded. Instead of feeling incomplete, you begin to feel whole. A person who learns to create happiness within themselves becomes emotionally secure because their peace does not rely on constant reassurance. They are still able to love, care, and connect with others, but they no longer depend on others to feel stable. Their happiness becomes self-created rather than borrowed from temporary situations. When happiness comes from within, relationships become more peaceful because they are no longer filled with pressure or fear. You no longer expect someone to fix your emotional struggles, and you no longer feel broken when situations change. Your peace becomes steady because it is rooted in self-awareness rather than external approval. Buddhist teachings remind us that the strongest foundation for happiness is the one that cannot be taken away. When you learn to generate peace within your own mind, you create a stability that remains even when people come and go. This inner stability allows you to live with greater calm, greater clarity, and a deeper sense of quiet confidence that does not depend on anyone's presence. 2. Neediness creates suffering. Neediness is often misunderstood as love, care, or emotional closeness, but in reality, neediness usually comes from fear rather than genuine connection. It is the fear of being alone, the fear of being ignored, the fear of not being important enough in someone's life. When this fear quietly grows inside the mind, it begins to create a constant desire for reassurance. A person starts expecting regular attention, quick replies, continuous understanding, and emotional availability from others. At first, these expectations may seem normal, but slowly they begin to create pressure both for the individual and for the people around them. When someone becomes emotionally needy, their happiness starts depending on how others behave. If someone responds warmly, they feel calm. If someone becomes distant, they feel anxious. If someone delays a reply, the mind starts creating unnecessary worries. Over time, this emotional dependency creates a cycle of overthinking, insecurity, and dissatisfaction. Even small situations begin to feel heavy because the mind is constantly searching for signs of acceptance or rejection. Buddhist teachings explain that attachment is one of the main causes of suffering. When the mind becomes strongly attached to a person, it starts creating expectations about how that person should behave. The mind begins to believe that the other person should always understand, always support, always prioritize, and always respond in a certain way. But reality does not always follow these expectations. People have their own responsibilities, their own emotions, and their own struggles. When reality does not match expectation, disappointment begins to grow. This disappointment is not created by the situation itself, but by the attachment to a particular outcome. The stronger the emotional dependency, the stronger the reaction when something does not go as expected. A simple change in behavior can create unnecessary pain because the mind starts assuming negative meanings behind small actions. Instead of feeling peaceful, the person begins to feel restless, constantly thinking about what went wrong or what might go wrong in the future. Neediness also affects self-respect. When someone feels that their happiness depends on another person's attention, they may start ignoring their own needs, opinions, and boundaries just to maintain the connection. They may begin adjusting their personality, hiding their true feelings, or accepting behavior that disturbs their peace, simply because they fear losing the relationship. Slowly, they move further away from their authentic self, and this creates internal discomfort that is difficult to explain but deeply felt. Buddhist wisdom encourages observing the nature of desire and emotional craving. The mind often believes that receiving more attention, more appreciation, or more reassurance will finally create satisfaction. But in reality, emotional craving often increases with fulfillment. The more reassurance someone receives, the more reassurance they may start expecting. The more attention they receive, the more attention they may feel they need to feel secure. This cycle creates endless seeking, where the mind never feels completely satisfied. When a person begins reducing emotional neediness, something very important starts to change inside. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer constantly waiting for external confirmation. Instead of reacting to every small change, the person becomes more stable and patient. They begin understanding that their emotional balance is their own responsibility. This awareness creates a quiet strength that allows them to connect with others without feeling controlled by them. Reducing neediness does not mean becoming distant or uncaring. It simply means developing emotional independence. It means learning to give love without demanding constant reassurance in return. It means appreciating people without expecting them to remove every discomfort in your life. It means understanding that while relationships can add beauty to life, they cannot be the sole source of emotional stability. When emotional dependency decreases, the mind becomes clearer. Overthinking reduces because there is less fear of losing approval. The person begins to feel more confident because their sense of worth is no longer tied to someone else's behavior. They start enjoying moments as they are, without constantly worrying about how others perceive them. Buddhist teachings remind us that peace begins when craving decreases. The more the mind learns to remain balanced without constant emotional reassurance, the more peaceful life becomes. Instead of feeling controlled by the presence or absence of others, the person begins to feel grounded within themselves. A person who is free from excessive neediness experiences relationships in a healthier way. They can care deeply, but they do not lose themselves in the process. They can connect meaningfully, but they do not feel broken when situations change. Their happiness remains stable because it is supported by self-awareness rather than emotional dependency. When the need to constantly receive validation begins to fade, the mind experiences a new form of freedom. This freedom is calm, quiet, and steady. It allows a person to live with emotional balance, knowing that their peace is not fragile. They no longer feel incomplete when alone, because they understand that completeness is not something another person gives, but something the mind gradually develops through awareness and inner growth. In this way, reducing neediness becomes not a loss, but a gain. It becomes the beginning of emotional maturity, where relationships are appreciated but not depended upon, and where happiness is experienced as something stable rather than something that can easily be taken away. 3. Solitude builds inner strength. Many people are afraid of solitude because they associate being alone with feeling empty or disconnected. In a world that constantly encourages social interaction, constant communication, and continuous activity, being alone is often misunderstood as something negative. People begin to believe that if they are alone, something must be missing in their life. They assume that happiness can only exist when they are surrounded by others, receiving attention, or feeling included in social circles. Because of this belief, they try to avoid solitude as much as possible, filling every quiet moment with noise, entertainment, or conversation. However, Buddhist teachings present a very different perspective. Solitude is not a punishment. Solitude is an opportunity. It is a space where the mind can breathe without pressure, where thoughts can settle without distraction, and where a person can reconnect with their true self. When you are constantly surrounded by opinions, expectations, and external influences, your mind becomes filled with noise that makes it difficult to understand what you truly feel or what you truly need. Solitude removes this noise and creates clarity. When a person spends time alone without distraction, they begin to observe their own thoughts more carefully. They begin to notice patterns in their thinking, reactions in their emotions, and habits in their behavior. This awareness is extremely powerful because it allows a person to understand themselves deeply rather than simply reacting to situations automatically. Many people live most of their lives responding to circumstances without fully understanding why they think or feel in certain ways. Solitude creates the environment where understanding becomes possible. Inner strength does not appear suddenly. It develops slowly when the mind learns how to remain stable without constant external stimulation. When you are always busy, always distracted, or always surrounded by others, your mind may temporarily feel comfortable, but it does not necessarily become stronger. Strength develops when the mind learns how to sit with itself peacefully, without feeling restless or uncomfortable. In solitude, a person begins to recognize that many of their worries were amplified by external noise. Without constant comparison, the pressure to impress others begins to fade. Without the need to continuously explain oneself, the mind becomes lighter. Solitude allows a person to temporarily step away from social expectations and observe life more clearly. This clarity helps a person understand what truly matters and what does not. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the mind becomes stronger when it learns to remain calm, even without external support. When you are comfortable being alone, you are no longer controlled by the fear of loneliness. This freedom changes the way you experience life. Decisions become clearer because they are not influenced by the fear of losing approval. Emotions become more balanced because they are not constantly reacting to social pressure. Solitude also improves self-awareness. When you spend time alone, you begin to notice what truly brings peace and what creates disturbance in your mind. You begin to understand your values more clearly. Instead of blindly following what others expect, you begin to develop your own understanding of what is meaningful. This process strengthens confidence because your actions start coming from clarity rather than confusion. Another important benefit of solitude is emotional healing. Many people carry unprocessed emotions because they never give themselves time to understand what they truly feel. When the mind is always distracted, emotional discomfort may remain hidden beneath activity. Solitude creates the quiet environment where these emotions can be observed gently and understood gradually. Instead of avoiding discomfort, a person learns to face their feelings with patience. This process allows emotional wounds to heal naturally over time. Solitude also strengthens independence. A person who is comfortable being alone does not feel desperate for constant company. They do not feel anxious when plans change or when others are unavailable. They understand that their well-being does not depend entirely on external presence. This independence creates stability because their emotional state is no longer easily shaken by small changes in social situations. It is important to understand that solitude does not mean isolation from the world. It means developing a healthy relationship with yourself. When you are comfortable with your own presence, interactions with others become more peaceful because they are no longer driven by emotional neediness. Instead of seeking constant reassurance, you begin to connect with others from a place of balance. Buddhist monks often practice solitude not because they dislike people, but because they understand the importance of observing the mind without distraction. Through solitude, they learn how thoughts arise and how emotions change. This awareness helps them remain calm, even in difficult situations. Inner strength grows when the mind becomes less reactive and more observant. When a person becomes comfortable in solitude, they no longer feel empty when they are alone. Instead, they begin to feel peaceful. Silence becomes relaxing rather than uncomfortable. Time alone becomes refreshing rather than heavy. The mind begins to experience stability because it is no longer dependent on constant stimulation. Solitude also encourages creativity and deeper thinking. Without continuous interruption, the mind can explore ideas more freely. Many meaningful insights appear when the mind is calm and undisturbed. This is why many wise individuals throughout history valued time alone. They understood that clarity often emerges when the mind is not overwhelmed by external noise. Another important aspect of solitude is that it teaches patience. When you are alone, you learn how to slow down. You learn that not every moment needs to be filled with activity. You begin to appreciate simple experiences such as quiet reflection, mindful breathing, or observing your surroundings. These simple moments create a deep sense of calm that cannot be easily achieved when the mind is constantly stimulated. Buddhist teachings remind us that strength does not always appear loud or visible. Often, the strongest minds are the quietest ones. Inner strength is the ability to remain stable even when external conditions change. It is the ability to remain calm even when situations are uncertain. This stability grows when the mind learns to feel complete within itself. When you learn to enjoy solitude, relationships also become healthier because you no longer expect others to remove your discomfort. You approach people with appreciation rather than emotional dependence. You respect their presence, but you do not feel lost in their absence. This balance creates peaceful connections because your happiness is no longer fragile. Solitude builds inner strength by teaching the mind that it is capable of feeling stable without constant external input. This realization creates confidence that is quiet but powerful. A person who is not afraid of being alone is not easily controlled by fear of rejection or fear of judgment. Their choices become more authentic because they are guided by understanding rather than pressure. Over time, solitude becomes a teacher. It teaches patience, awareness, independence, and emotional balance. It helps a person understand that peace is not something that must be chased outside, but something that can be discovered within. This discovery creates a stable foundation for happiness that remains steady even when life becomes unpredictable. When the mind becomes comfortable with solitude, it becomes stronger, clearer, and more peaceful. Instead of feeling incomplete when alone, a person begins to feel whole. And from this wholeness, true confidence quietly grows. 4. Detachment does not mean you stop loving. One of the biggest misunderstandings about detachment is the belief that it requires a person to become cold, distant, or emotionally disconnected from others. Many people hear the word detachment and immediately imagine a life without love, without care, and without meaningful relationships. They assume that if they stop being emotionally dependent, they will also lose their ability to feel deeply. Because of this misunderstanding, they resist the idea of detachment, believing that attachment is necessary for love to exist. However, Buddhist teachings explain that detachment is not the absence of love. In fact, detachment allows love to become healthier, calmer, and more genuine. True detachment does not remove care from the heart. It removes fear from the mind. It removes the fear of losing someone, the fear of being abandoned, and the fear of not receiving enough attention. When fear decreases, love becomes more peaceful because it is no longer controlled by insecurity. Attachment often creates the belief that another person is responsible for our emotional stability. When this belief becomes strong, relationships begin to carry pressure. A person may begin expecting constant understanding, constant reassurance, and constant availability from the other person. Slowly, the relationship becomes less about appreciation and more about emotional dependence. This dependence creates anxiety because the mind begins to worry about losing the source of comfort. Detachment changes the nature of love by removing this pressure. It allows a person to care deeply while still maintaining emotional balance. Instead of feeling incomplete without someone, a detached person feels whole within themselves. They are able to share love freely because they are not trying to use the relationship to fill an inner emptiness. Their care becomes more genuine because it is not driven by fear. Buddhist wisdom teaches that clinging creates suffering because it creates resistance to change. Everything in life is temporary. People grow, circumstances evolve, and situations shift in ways that cannot always be predicted. When someone becomes strongly attached, they begin to resist this natural change. They want things to remain exactly as they are. They want people to behave in certain ways, remain close in certain ways, and provide comfort in certain ways. But life does not always move according to personal expectations. When reality does not match expectation, emotional pain begins to appear. The pain does not come from love itself, but from the attempt to control what cannot be controlled. Detachment teaches acceptance. It teaches the mind to appreciate what exists without trying to possess it completely. This creates peace because acceptance reduces internal resistance. Detachment also protects relationships from becoming overwhelming. When emotional dependence is very strong, small changes in behavior can create large reactions. A delayed response may feel like rejection. A moment of distance may feel like abandonment. These reactions create tension, and tension slowly damages connection. But when a person practices detachment, they allow space within the relationship. This space creates comfort because both individuals are free to grow without feeling controlled. Healthy love respects individuality. It allows each person to maintain their identity without feeling forced to constantly meet expectations. Detachment supports this healthy dynamic because it reduces the fear that often causes people to hold on too tightly. When there is less fear, there is more trust. When there is more trust, there is more emotional stability. Detachment also encourages self-respect. When a person does not depend completely on another for emotional validation, they are less likely to ignore their own needs. They are less likely to tolerate disrespect simply to avoid feeling alone. They understand that their peace is valuable, and they choose connections that support their emotional well-being. This creates relationships based on mutual respect rather than emotional desperation. Buddhist teachings often emphasize balance. Extreme attachment creates suffering, but complete emotional isolation also creates imbalance. The goal is not to reject relationships, but to approach them with awareness. When awareness is present, love becomes an experience of connection rather than possession. A detached person can care deeply, but they do not feel destroyed if circumstances change. Another important aspect of detachment is understanding that people cannot always give what we expect from them. Every person has their own struggles, limitations, and responsibilities. Expecting one person to fulfill every emotional need creates pressure that is difficult to maintain. Detachment allows a person to appreciate what others can offer without demanding perfection. This understanding creates compassion. Instead of feeling hurt when someone fails to meet expectations, the mind becomes more patient. It understands that everyone is imperfect and that expecting constant emotional fulfillment from one person is unrealistic. Compassion reduces frustration and allows relationships to develop naturally rather than forcefully. Detachment also reduces jealousy and insecurity. When a person feels emotionally secure within themselves, they are less likely to feel threatened by small changes in attention or behavior. Their sense of worth is not entirely dependent on external validation, so they feel less anxious about losing importance in someone's life. This confidence creates calmness because the mind is not constantly searching for reassurance. Many people believe that strong attachment shows strong love, but often strong attachment simply shows strong fear. Fear of being replaced, fear of being forgotten, fear of being left behind. When fear becomes part of love, the relationship begins to feel heavy. Detachment removes this fear and replaces it with trust in the natural flow of life. Detachment does not mean that a person stops caring if someone leaves. It means they understand that their life still has meaning, even if circumstances change. They feel sadness when necessary, but they do not feel destroyed. Their identity is not completely tied to one relationship. They remain connected to themselves, even when connections with others shift. When detachment is present, love becomes calmer and more stable. There is less need to constantly prove loyalty or measure affection. There is less anxiety about small misunderstandings. Instead of feeling controlled by emotional reactions, the person responds thoughtfully. This creates peaceful communication because reactions are no longer driven by fear. Buddhist wisdom teaches that clinging creates illusion. The mind begins to believe that happiness exists only in certain people or certain situations. Detachment removes this illusion and allows the mind to see that peace can exist independently. Relationships become a beautiful addition to life, but not the sole foundation of happiness. Detachment also improves emotional maturity. A mature mind understands that love does not mean ownership. It means appreciation without control. It means connection without losing individuality. It means caring without demanding constant reassurance. This maturity allows relationships to grow naturally because they are not forced to carry unrealistic expectations. When you practice detachment, you become more capable of loving in a peaceful way. You give space when needed. You allow growth when necessary. You communicate without fear. You care without trying to control outcomes. This creates relationships that feel lighter and more comfortable. Detachment allows a person to experience love without becoming overwhelmed by it. Instead of feeling anxious about maintaining the connection, the person feels grateful for the experience itself. Gratitude replaces fear, and appreciation replaces insecurity. In this way, detachment does not remove love, it purifies it. It removes the emotional pressure that often damages relationships. It allows love to exist as a positive connection rather than a source of anxiety. When the mind is not afraid of losing, it becomes capable of loving more peacefully. Buddhist teachings remind us that everything in life changes, but awareness allows us to remain balanced through these changes. Detachment helps us accept this truth without becoming emotionally overwhelmed. It allows us to love fully while understanding that our inner peace does not depend on external permanence. When you understand detachment deeply, you realize that love does not disappear. Instead, love becomes calmer, more respectful, and more stable. It becomes free from fear, free from pressure, and free from the constant need for reassurance. Detachment teaches that you can care deeply for others while still remaining connected to yourself. You can love sincerely without losing your emotional balance. You can appreciate people without depending on them for your sense of worth. In this way, detachment becomes not a loss of love, but a refinement of love. It transforms emotional dependence into emotional wisdom, and this wisdom allows relationships to become a source of peace rather than a source of suffering. 5. Stop seeking validation from others. One of the deepest reasons people feel emotionally disturbed is the constant need for approval from others. Many individuals unconsciously measure their worth based on how they are treated, how they are perceived, and how much recognition they receive. They feel happy when appreciated, but they feel disappointed when ignored. They feel confident when praised, but they feel doubtful when criticized. Slowly, their self-image becomes dependent on external opinions rather than internal understanding. From a young age, many people are taught to seek approval. They are rewarded when they behave in certain ways and discouraged when they act differently. Over time, this conditioning creates a habit of looking outside for confirmation of value. Instead of trusting their own judgment, they begin asking themselves whether others approve of their decisions. Instead of expressing their true personality, they begin adjusting themselves to fit expectations. This habit may appear harmless, but it slowly weakens inner confidence. Buddhist teachings encourage self-awareness rather than dependence on constant external validation. They remind us that opinions are always changing because they are influenced by personal preferences, moods, and circumstances. One person may appreciate you, while another may misunderstand you. One person may support your choices, while another may question them. If your self-worth depends entirely on these shifting opinions, your peace becomes unstable because you are trying to satisfy many perspectives that cannot all be satisfied at the same time. Seeking validation often creates internal pressure. A person may begin overthinking their words, actions, and decisions, constantly wondering how they are being perceived. They may avoid expressing honest opinions because they fear disagreement. They may suppress their true interests because they want to appear acceptable to others. Over time, this behavior creates a distance between the person's true self and the image they present to the world. Maintaining this image becomes exhausting because it requires continuous adjustment. When the mind becomes dependent on approval, even small criticism can feel very heavy. A simple negative comment may create self-doubt. A lack of response may feel like rejection. The mind begins to interpret neutral situations as personal judgments. This sensitivity creates emotional instability because the person becomes highly affected by external reactions. Buddhist wisdom teaches that attachment to praise and fear of criticism are both obstacles to inner peace. Praise may feel pleasant, but if the mind becomes attached to it, it begins to crave more of it. When praise is not received, dissatisfaction appears. In the same way, fear of criticism creates anxiety because the person tries to avoid situations where judgment may occur. This cycle creates tension because the mind is always trying to protect its image. When a person gradually reduces the need for validation, they begin to feel a new kind of freedom. They no longer feel pressured to constantly impress others. They become more comfortable expressing their true thoughts. They become more willing to follow their own understanding, even when it is different from popular opinion. This freedom creates confidence because their actions are guided by clarity rather than fear. Self-validation does not mean ignoring feedback completely. It means understanding that your value is not defined entirely by others' reactions. Feedback can be helpful when it supports growth, but it should not control your identity. When you respect your own intentions and values, external opinions lose their power to disturb your inner balance. Another important aspect of reducing validation seeking is learning to accept that not everyone will understand you. Every individual has a different perspective shaped by their experiences. Expecting universal approval creates unnecessary pressure because it is impossible to meet every expectation. Buddhist teachings remind us that acceptance of imperfection reduces suffering. When you accept that misunderstanding is a natural part of life, you become less disturbed by it. Seeking constant validation can also create comparison. When a person measures their worth based on how they are perceived, they may begin comparing themselves to others to evaluate their standing. Comparison often creates dissatisfaction because there will always be someone more appreciated, more recognized, or more praised in certain situations. The mind begins to feel inadequate, even when there is no real deficiency. Reducing comparison creates peace because the focus shifts from external measurement to internal understanding. Instead of asking whether others are doing better, the person begins asking whether they are living according to their own values. This shift strengthens self-respect because actions are guided by personal clarity rather than competition. Buddhist wisdom emphasizes awareness of intention. When actions are guided by sincere intention, the need for constant approval decreases. A person begins acting according to what they believe is right, rather than constantly adjusting their behavior to satisfy expectations. This creates consistency in character, and consistency builds trust within oneself. When you trust yourself, you do not feel easily shaken by disagreement. You understand that disagreement does not automatically mean failure. It simply means that perspectives are different. This understanding reduces emotional reaction because the mind is no longer trying to protect an image at all costs. Validation seeking often creates fear of rejection. The person may avoid expressing ideas or taking opportunities because they worry about negative judgment. This fear limits growth because many meaningful experiences require courage. When the need for approval decreases, courage increases because the person becomes more willing to accept imperfection. Buddhist teachings remind us that growth often happens outside comfort zones. When a person becomes less dependent on external approval, they become more open to learning. They become more willing to accept mistakes as part of development rather than as proof of inadequacy. This mindset reduces fear and encourages progress. Another important benefit of self-validation is emotional stability. When a person understands their own worth, praise does not create excessive excitement, and criticism does not create deep discouragement. The mind remains balanced because its foundation is internal rather than external. This balance creates calmness in both positive and negative situations. When validation is no longer constantly required, relationships also improve. Communication becomes more honest because the person is not always trying to appear perfect. They become more authentic because they are not hiding their true personality to gain approval. Authenticity creates deeper connections because people feel comfortable interacting with someone who is genuine. Buddhist philosophy teaches that attachment to identity creates suffering. When a person becomes overly attached to a particular image, they feel disturbed when that image is challenged. Self-validation reduces this attachment because identity becomes flexible rather than rigid. The person understands that they are continuously growing and learning, and they do not need constant confirmation of perfection. Reducing the need for validation also increases inner silence. The mind becomes less occupied with imagining how others perceive every action. Instead of replaying conversations repeatedly, the person allows experiences to pass naturally. This quietness creates mental clarity because energy is no longer spent on unnecessary worry. When a person respects themselves, they become less dependent on approval because they already feel secure in their own understanding. Self-respect creates quiet confidence that does not require constant recognition. This confidence allows a person to move through life with stability, even when external reactions are unpredictable. Buddhist teachings encourage letting go of excessive concern about reputation. Reputation can change quickly because it is influenced by many factors outside personal control. When a person focuses more on intention than on appearance, they feel less anxious about maintaining a perfect image. This reduces mental pressure and allows natural behavior. True confidence does not require continuous confirmation. It grows slowly when a person repeatedly acts according to their values. Each action that aligns with understanding strengthens trust within oneself. Over time, this trust becomes stronger than external approval. When you stop seeking validation constantly, you begin to experience a sense of emotional independence. You still appreciate encouragement, but you do not depend on it. You still listen to feedback, but you are not defined by it. You still value relationships, but you do not lose your sense of identity within them. This independence creates peace because your emotional state becomes less affected by unpredictable opinions. Instead of feeling controlled by praise or criticism, you remain steady in your understanding. This steadiness allows you to live with clarity because your decisions are guided by awareness rather than fear. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that true security cannot be found in constantly changing opinions. It can only be found in a stable mind that understands its own value. When the mind stops searching outside for constant confirmation, it begins discovering quiet confidence within. Freedom appears when the need to impress everyone disappears. Peace appears when the need to be understood by everyone disappears. Stability appears when the need to be approved by everyone disappears. When you validate yourself through awareness, honesty, and growth, your confidence becomes natural rather than forced. This natural confidence does not need constant recognition because it is supported by understanding rather than external reaction. In this way, reducing the need for validation does not disconnect you from the world. Instead, it allows you to engage with the world more peacefully. You become less afraid of judgment, less disturbed by misunderstanding, and less pressured to appear perfect. You simply live more honestly, more calmly, and more freely. And this quiet freedom is one of the strongest foundations of lasting happiness. 6. Emotional independence creates lasting peace. Emotional independence is one of the most powerful qualities a person can develop, yet it is often misunderstood. Many people believe that emotional independence means not caring about others or avoiding relationships. They imagine that becoming emotionally independent requires isolation or detachment from all human connection. However, Buddhist teachings explain that emotional independence does not mean avoiding people. It means developing inner stability that does not collapse when external situations change. When emotional independence is absent, a person's inner state becomes strongly influenced by the behavior of others. A kind word can create happiness, but a small misunderstanding can create deep disappointment. A simple change in tone can disturb the mind, and a lack of attention can create feelings of insecurity. The emotional condition of the person begins to rise and fall depending on how others behave. This creates instability because human interactions are naturally unpredictable. People are influenced by many factors such as stress, responsibilities, health, and personal struggles. Because of this, their behavior cannot always remain consistent. When someone expects others to always respond in a certain way, they unknowingly create a fragile emotional structure that is easily disturbed. Emotional independence strengthens the mind so that it does not depend completely on external reactions for stability. Buddhist philosophy teaches that peace is more reliable when it comes from understanding rather than from circumstances. Circumstances can change quickly, but understanding develops gradually and remains stable. Emotional independence is rooted in this understanding. It is the awareness that while relationships and social interactions are valuable, they cannot be the sole foundation of inner peace. When a person becomes emotionally independent, they begin to observe their reactions more carefully. Instead of immediately reacting to every external situation, they develop the ability to pause and reflect. This pause creates space between the situation and the response. In that space, awareness becomes active. Instead of reacting automatically, the person begins to respond thoughtfully. This shift reduces unnecessary emotional suffering. For example, when someone does not receive the attention they expected, an emotionally dependent mind may quickly assume rejection or loss of importance. But an emotionally independent mind considers other possibilities. It understands that circumstances may be influencing the situation. Instead of creating negative assumptions, the mind remains balanced and patient. Emotional independence also reduces fear. When happiness depends entirely on others, the mind becomes afraid of losing those sources of comfort. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, and fear of misunderstanding begin to influence behavior. A person may avoid expressing honest thoughts because they worry about losing approval. They may tolerate uncomfortable situations because they fear losing connection. This fear limits authenticity and creates inner tension. When emotional independence develops, fear begins to reduce. A person becomes more comfortable expressing their true self because they no longer feel that their entire stability depends on external acceptance. They understand that while relationships are meaningful, their sense of worth does not disappear when relationships change. This understanding creates courage because the person feels supported by their own awareness. Another important benefit of emotional independence is resilience. Life naturally includes moments of uncertainty, disagreement, and loss. When the mind is strongly dependent on external stability, these experiences can feel overwhelming. But when the mind is internally grounded, it is able to face change with greater calmness. Emotional independence does not remove difficulty from life, but it reduces the intensity of emotional disturbance created by difficulty. Buddhist teachings emphasize the importance of observing the nature of emotions. Emotions arise, remain for some time, and eventually pass. When a person understands this natural flow, they become less afraid of temporary discomfort. Instead of reacting impulsively, they allow emotions to settle naturally. This patience prevents small difficulties from becoming larger problems. Emotional independence also improves decision-making. When a person constantly seeks reassurance before making choices, they may feel confused or uncertain when reassurance is not available. They may hesitate to act because they fear making mistakes without external approval. But when a person trusts their understanding, they become more confident in their decisions. They understand that mistakes are part of learning, and they do not require constant confirmation to move forward. This confidence does not come from believing that one is always correct. It comes from accepting responsibility for personal growth. An emotionally independent person is willing to learn from experience rather than avoiding action due to fear of judgment. This willingness to learn creates continuous development because the person becomes open to improvement. Emotional independence also reduces unnecessary conflict in relationships. When a person depends heavily on others for emotional stability, they may expect others to constantly meet their emotional needs. When these expectations are not fulfilled, frustration may arise. But when emotional independence is present, expectations become more balanced. The person appreciates support, but does not demand constant reassurance. This balance reduces tension because relationships are not overloaded with pressure. Buddhist wisdom encourages moderation in emotional dependence. Too much dependence creates suffering, but complete avoidance of connection can also create imbalance. Emotional independence allows connection without losing stability. A person can care deeply while still maintaining inner calm. They can experience closeness without feeling controlled by fear of loss. Another aspect of emotional independence is the ability to enjoy time alone without feeling uncomfortable. Many people feel restless when they are not engaged with others because they are not used to relying on their own presence for comfort. They may feel the need to constantly communicate, constantly check for responses, or constantly seek distraction. Emotional independence allows a person to feel peaceful even in silence. When silence becomes comfortable, the mind becomes clearer. Instead of constantly seeking stimulation, the person begins to appreciate stillness. This stillness allows deeper reflection and greater understanding. Many insights appear when the mind is not overwhelmed by external activity. Emotional independence also supports self-respect. When a person values their own peace, they become more aware of how situations affect their well-being. They become more willing to create healthy boundaries that protect their stability. Boundaries are not created to isolate oneself, but to maintain balance. They allow relationships to exist without causing emotional exhaustion. Buddhist teachings often highlight the importance of awareness in maintaining peace. Awareness allows a person to observe when emotional dependence is increasing and gently bring attention back to internal stability. This practice gradually strengthens the ability to remain balanced in different situations. When emotional independence develops, external events lose the power to completely control inner experience. A person still feels emotions, but emotions do not overwhelm their sense of stability. Happiness becomes calmer because it is not dependent on constant stimulation. Sadness becomes manageable because it is understood as temporary. Emotional independence also creates consistency in character. When a person's behavior is not constantly influenced by changing opinions, they become more predictable in a positive way. Others begin to trust them because their reactions are balanced. This trust improves relationships because stability creates comfort. Many people believe that emotional dependence shows loyalty or affection, but often it creates pressure. Emotional independence creates space where relationships can develop naturally, appreciation replaces obligation, and connection becomes more relaxed. Buddhist philosophy teaches that peace is found when the mind is not constantly pulled by desire or fear. Emotional dependence often creates both desire for approval and fear of rejection. Emotional independence reduces both by strengthening awareness of inner stability. This awareness allows the mind to remain centered even when circumstances change. Another important benefit of emotional independence is the ability to experience happiness without waiting for specific conditions. Instead of thinking that happiness will come only when certain people behave in certain ways, the person begins to experience peace in ordinary moments. This ability creates a sense of contentment that does not require constant external stimulation. Emotional independence also supports patience. When a person is not overly dependent on immediate responses, they become more comfortable, allowing situations to develop naturally. They understand that not everything needs immediate resolution. This patience reduces anxiety because the mind is not constantly seeking quick reassurance. When emotional independence is present, the person becomes less reactive and more reflective. Instead of immediately responding to discomfort, they observe their thoughts and choose responses carefully. This thoughtful approach reduces regret because actions are guided by awareness rather than impulse. Buddhist teachings remind us that stability is created through practice. Emotional independence does not develop instantly. It grows gradually as a person becomes more aware of their reactions and learns to rely on internal understanding. Each moment of awareness strengthens the ability to remain calm in different situations. Over time, emotional independence becomes natural. The person no longer feels controlled by the presence or absence of others. They appreciate relationships but do not feel incomplete without them. Their peace remains steady because it is supported by self-awareness. When the mind becomes emotionally independent, it experiences a quiet confidence that does not need constant reinforcement. This confidence allows the person to move through life with calmness, even when circumstances are uncertain. They understand that while external situations may change, their inner stability remains available. In this way, emotional independence creates lasting peace because it is not dependent on temporary conditions. It allows a person to remain balanced during success and calm during difficulty. It creates resilience because stability is not easily shaken by external change. Buddhist wisdom teaches that true peace is not found in controlling the world, but in understanding the mind. Emotional independence reflects this understanding because it allows the mind to remain centered, regardless of changing circumstances. When emotional independence grows, relationships become healthier, decisions become clearer, and life becomes lighter. The person no longer feels constantly pulled by the need for reassurance. Instead, they experience a steady calmness that supports both personal growth and meaningful connection. This calmness becomes a reliable source of peace that remains available even when external conditions are uncertain. And this reliability is what makes emotional independence one of the strongest foundations of lasting happiness. 7. When you are happy alone, relationships improve. Many people believe that relationships are the source of happiness, but Buddhist wisdom teaches that relationships become truly peaceful only when happiness already exists within the individual. When a person feels incomplete alone, they often enter relationships with the hidden expectation that someone else will remove their loneliness, fix their emotional discomfort, or constantly provide reassurance. At first, this expectation may not be clearly visible, but slowly it begins to influence behavior. The person may start expecting constant attention, continuous understanding, and steady emotional support. Over time, this creates pressure within the relationship, because one person becomes responsible for maintaining the emotional balance of another. When happiness depends entirely on another person's presence, even small changes in behavior can create worry. A delayed response may create doubt. A busy schedule may feel like distance. A simple misunderstanding may feel like rejection. The mind becomes sensitive because it fears losing the source of emotional comfort. This sensitivity can create tension in relationships because interactions begin to feel heavy rather than natural. However, when a person learns to feel peaceful alone, their approach to relationships changes completely. They no longer enter connections with the intention of filling an inner emptiness. Instead, they approach relationships from a place of stability. This stability allows interactions to feel lighter because the relationship is no longer carrying the responsibility of creating happiness. Instead of expecting others to provide constant reassurance, the person begins to appreciate connection as a positive addition to an already balanced life. Buddhist teachings often emphasize that attachment creates pressure, while awareness creates freedom. When a person is overly attached, they may unintentionally try to control situations to maintain emotional comfort. They may try to influence how often someone communicates, how much attention they receive, or how situations unfold. These attempts are usually not intentional forms of control, but they arise from the fear of losing connection. This fear can create discomfort because relationships thrive in an environment of trust rather than pressure. When happiness exists independently, trust becomes easier. A person who is comfortable alone does not feel threatened by temporary distance or silence. They understand that space is a natural part of life. They allow others to have responsibilities, interests, and personal growth without feeling insecure. This understanding creates comfort within the relationship because both individuals feel respected as independent beings. When emotional dependence decreases, communication becomes more honest. A person who is not afraid of losing approval becomes more comfortable expressing their true thoughts and feelings. They do not feel the need to constantly present a perfect image to maintain connection. This honesty allows deeper understanding because communication becomes more authentic. Authentic communication reduces misunderstanding because both individuals feel free to express themselves without fear. Another important change that occurs when a person is happy alone is the reduction of unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations often create disappointment because they assume that another person should always behave in ways that maintain emotional comfort. When expectations are very high, even small imperfections can create dissatisfaction. But when a person feels stable within themselves, they become more accepting of natural human limitations. They understand that everyone has moments of distraction, stress, or difficulty. This understanding creates patience, and patience strengthens relationships. Buddhist wisdom teaches that acceptance reduces suffering. When a person accepts that no relationship can provide perfect emotional fulfillment at all times, they begin to appreciate the relationship for what it naturally offers. Appreciation replaces pressure, and gratitude replaces dissatisfaction. This shift creates a peaceful environment where connection can grow naturally rather than being forced. When a person is happy alone, they also become more selective about the relationships they maintain. Instead of seeking connection out of fear of loneliness, they choose relationships that align with their values and emotional well-being. They become less willing to remain in situations that create constant disturbance because they understand that being alone is not something to fear. This awareness encourages healthier boundaries that protect peace. Healthy boundaries are not created to distance oneself from others, but to maintain emotional balance. When boundaries are clear, relationships become more respectful because both individuals understand each other's needs. Respect creates stability because it prevents situations where one person feels overwhelmed or undervalued. Emotional independence allows a person to communicate boundaries calmly without feeling guilty or afraid of rejection. When happiness exists independently, jealousy often decreases. Jealousy usually arises when a person fears losing importance or fears being replaced. When self-worth is stable, this fear becomes weaker because the person understands that their value does not depend entirely on comparison. They trust their individuality rather than constantly measuring their importance based on external attention. This trust reduces insecurity and allows relationships to feel more relaxed. Buddhist teachings encourage observing the nature of comparison. Comparison often creates dissatisfaction because the mind focuses on what appears missing rather than appreciating what already exists. When a person is content alone, they become less influenced by comparison because they do not rely on others to confirm their worth. This independence creates calmness because the mind is not constantly competing for validation. When a person is happy alone, they also become better listeners. Instead of constantly worrying about how they are being perceived, they can focus more on understanding others. This presence improves communication because the interaction becomes more balanced. Listening creates deeper connection because it shows respect and genuine interest. Another important benefit of being happy alone is emotional consistency. A person who feels stable within themselves does not react intensely to every small change. Their responses remain balanced because their emotional state is not constantly shifting based on external reactions. This consistency creates comfort because others feel secure interacting with someone whose reactions are thoughtful rather than impulsive. Relationships often become difficult when both individuals rely heavily on each other for emotional stability. Each person may expect the other to remove discomfort, which creates pressure. But when at least one person develops emotional independence, the dynamic becomes more peaceful because there is less demand for constant reassurance. Emotional independence encourages mutual support without creating emotional burden. Buddhist philosophy teaches that clinging creates fear, and fear creates tension. When a person does not cling tightly to relationships, they experience connection more peacefully. They understand that every relationship is influenced by change, and they allow change without feeling completely disturbed. This acceptance reduces anxiety because the person trusts their ability to remain stable even when circumstances evolve. When happiness exists independently, time spent with others becomes more meaningful. Instead of seeking constant presence, the person appreciates moments of connection more deeply. Appreciation increases satisfaction because the focus shifts from what is missing to what is present. This perspective strengthens relationships because gratitude creates positive emotional energy. Being happy alone also allows a person to encourage growth within relationships. Instead of expecting others to remain the same, they support development. They understand that personal growth sometimes requires space, reflection, and change. Supporting growth strengthens relationships because both individuals feel encouraged rather than restricted. Buddhist teachings often emphasize the importance of balance. Too much dependence creates suffering, but too much distance can create disconnection. Happiness within oneself creates the balance where connection is appreciated without becoming overwhelming. This balance allows relationships to exist naturally without constant emotional tension. When a person is comfortable alone, they also become more patient during challenges. Instead of immediately fearing the end of the relationship when difficulties appear, they understand that challenges are part of life. This patience allows problems to be approached calmly rather than emotionally. Calm discussion improves understanding because both individuals feel respected. Another important aspect of being happy alone is that it reduces the need to prove worth constantly. The person does not feel the need to continuously demonstrate importance to maintain connection. Their sense of value remains stable regardless of external reaction. This stability reduces stress because the relationship is not constantly being evaluated. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that peace is found when the mind is not constantly grasping for reassurance. When reassurance is not constantly required, interactions become more relaxed. Both individuals feel comfortable being themselves because they are not pressured to maintain a perfect image. When happiness is internal, relationships become a choice rather than a necessity. This choice creates freedom because connection is based on appreciation rather than fear. Appreciation creates warmth, while fear creates tension. Relationships based on appreciation are more likely to remain peaceful because they are not driven by emotional urgency. Being happy alone also strengthens empathy. A person who understands their own mind becomes more capable of understanding others. Self-awareness improves compassion because the person recognizes that everyone experiences uncertainty and change. Compassion improves relationships because understanding replaces judgment. Buddhist teachings encourage awareness of impermanence. Understanding that situations change allows a person to appreciate the present moment more fully. Instead of constantly worrying about future loss, they focus on experiencing connection sincerely. This presence improves relationships because attention is given to what is happening rather than to imagined problems. When a person develops happiness within themselves, they no longer feel that relationships are required for emotional survival. They feel capable of living peacefully, even when alone. This capability removes pressure from relationships because the connection is no longer carrying the responsibility of preventing loneliness. Relationships become more harmonious when both individuals feel emotionally stable. Stability allows communication to remain respectful even during disagreement. It allows space without creating insecurity. It allows individuality without creating distance. This harmony creates a sense of comfort that supports long-term connection. Being happy alone does not reduce the importance of relationships. Instead, it increases their quality. Connections become based on mutual respect rather than emotional need. Both individuals feel valued for who they are rather than for the emotional security they provide. This creates relationships that feel supportive rather than demanding. Buddhist philosophy teaches that peace grows when craving decreases. When the craving for constant reassurance decreases, the mind becomes more relaxed. This relaxation improves relationships because tension is reduced. A relaxed mind communicates more clearly and listens more patiently. When you are happy alone, you become more grateful for meaningful connections because you are not constantly worried about losing them. Gratitude creates positive emotional energy that strengthens bonds. Appreciation encourages kindness, and kindness supports understanding. Over time, being happy alone transforms the way relationships are experienced. Instead of feeling controlled by emotional urgency, the person feels guided by awareness. They become more attentive, more patient, and more understanding. These qualities create an environment where relationships can grow naturally. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that true connection does not come from dependency, but from shared understanding. When both individuals feel emotionally stable, connection becomes more authentic. Authentic connection creates deeper satisfaction because it is not influenced by fear of loss. When happiness exists within, relationships become expressions of shared experience rather than solutions to loneliness. They become spaces where individuals support each other's growth rather than depend on each other for identity. This creates peaceful companionship that does not restrict personal development. Being happy alone allows a person to experience connection without losing independence. Independence allows freedom, and freedom allows trust. Trust allows relationships to develop without constant tension. This process creates stability because connection is supported by mutual respect. In this way, happiness within oneself improves relationships because it removes the pressure that often creates difficulty. When a person no longer feels incomplete alone, they approach relationships with calmness. They appreciate presence, but do not fear absence. They care deeply, but do not cling tightly. Buddhist teachings remind us that peace grows when the mind is balanced. When the mind is balanced, relationships reflect this balance. They become calmer, more respectful, and more meaningful. When you are happy alone, relationships no longer feel like emotional necessities. They become meaningful choices that add value to life without controlling it. And this creates connections that are peaceful, stable, and deeply fulfilling. Happiness does not begin when someone enters your life. Happiness begins when you stop feeling incomplete without them. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the more you depend on others for your peace, the more fragile your mind becomes. But when you learn to enjoy your own company, something powerful happens within you. Silence becomes comforting, solitude becomes strength, and your heart becomes free from the fear of losing anyone. When you are happy alone, you no longer chase attention, approval, or constant reassurance. You begin to live with calm confidence, knowing that your peace is not controlled by the presence or absence of others. People may come and go, situations may change, but a peaceful mind remains steady in all conditions. Be calm alone, be strong alone, be complete within yourself, because the greatest freedom in life is the ability to feel peaceful, even when you have no one. And when you master this quiet strength, you discover a happiness that no one can take away.